We grow up believing that maturity is something we must strive for. We're told that to become an adult means to collect experiences, to build discipline, to push ourselves toward becoming someone better than who we are now. And so, from childhood, we begin a constant effort to become mature. But have you noticed that the harder you try to be mature, the more artificial it feels? It becomes an image you project, not something that truly belongs to you. The paradox of growing up is that real maturity happens only when you stop trying to become it. Krishnamurti once said that the moment we strive to be something, we are in conflict with what we actually are. Think about that for a second. If you're always chasing maturity, you're telling yourself that who you are right now isn't enough. You create an image of a wiser, calmer, more disciplined version of yourself, and then you struggle daily to live up to that image. That struggle is exhausting, and more importantly, it separates you from the reality of your own being. Have you ever watched yourself pretending to be mature in front of others? Maybe you lower your voice, you carefully choose your words, you act as though you're unbothered by things that actually disturb you. You play the part of a mature adult, but when you're alone, when no one is watching, you might feel restless, frustrated, or even childish. That gap between the mask you wear and what you actually feel inside, that's the cost of trying to manufacture maturity. Now, here's the paradox. When you stop trying to be mature, when you allow yourself to actually see what's going on inside without judgment, something remarkable begins to unfold. You start to notice your own reactions. You catch yourself getting angry, jealous, or insecure. And instead of saying, "I shouldn't feel this way," a mature person wouldn't. You simply watch it. That quiet observation, without resistance, is where real maturity is born. Krishnamurti often emphasized that awareness itself brings transformation, not effort, not discipline in the sense of forcing yourself to fit a mold, but simple, clear awareness. If you're aware of your impatience, that awareness itself has a strange way of dissolving it. If you're aware of your fear, without running away from it or trying to conquer it, the fear begins to lose its grip. This is not the result of effort, but of insight. You see, maturity is not an achievement. It's not a destination that you reach after years of self-improvement. It's not even about age, because we've all met older people who are still petty, insecure, and childish. And we've also met young people who carry a depth and calmness that feels far beyond their years. Real maturity has nothing to do with time or effort. It arises in the present moment, when the mind stops striving to become and simply sees. But our society conditions us to always become something. From the moment we start school, we're taught to compete, to improve, to climb. Be better, be stronger, be smarter, be wiser. And so we carry that same approach into our inner life. We try to become peaceful, we try to become loving, we try to become mature. But can love be forced? Can peace be manufactured? Can maturity be achieved by effort? Or are these things natural flowers of the mind, blooming only when the soil is free from struggle? Let me give you an image. Imagine holding a flower in your hand and demanding that it bloom faster. You water it more, you talk to it, you even pull at its petals trying to open it. But no matter what you do, the flower will bloom in its own time, in its own way. Your effort can't make it mature. In fact, your effort might destroy it. Maturity in human beings is the same. It happens naturally, without effort, when we give the mind space to grow. So then, what does it mean to stop trying? Does it mean giving up, becoming careless, or living without direction? Not at all. Stopping the effort doesn't mean falling into laziness. It means seeing that the effort itself was never going to bring you what you were chasing. It means you don't force yourself into some image of maturity, but instead, you remain deeply aware of yourself as you are right now. And in that awareness, without choice, transformation takes place. Think about how children learn. They don't strive to become mature. They're curious. They observe. They make mistakes. They cry. They laugh. They get up again. In that openness, they grow. But somewhere along the way, we lose that natural intelligence. We start imitating, comparing, and forcing ourselves into images. And that's when maturity becomes a performance, rather than a reality. The paradox of growing up, then, is that the very moment you stop chasing maturity, you begin to embody it. Because maturity is not seriousness, it's not suppressing your emotions, it's not wearing a mask of wisdom. True maturity is sensitivity. It's the ability to see clearly, to listen deeply, to respond to life without being driven by fear or ambition. And that clarity comes only when the mind is still enough to observe itself without judgment. But here's where it gets even more interesting. When you stop trying to be mature, you don't just free yourself from the burden of pretending, you also begin to relate to others differently. Think about how often our relationships are filled with effort. We try to be the strong one in a friendship, the understanding one in a family, or the wise one in a relationship. And yet that effort creates a subtle distance. It's no longer a real connection. It's a performance. When you drop that performance, when you allow yourself to be as you are, sometimes fragile, sometimes confused, sometimes joyful, sometimes clear, you give the other person permission to be real too. That honesty creates intimacy, and intimacy is a hallmark of maturity. Not the intimacy of constant agreement, but the intimacy of authenticity, where nothing needs to be hidden. Krishnamurti pointed out that freedom is the essence of maturity. Freedom from comparison, freedom from becoming, freedom from images. And isn't it true? The moment you stop comparing yourself to what you think a mature person should look like, you actually feel lighter. You're no longer carrying the burden of an ideal. That lightness allows you to meet life directly, without filters. Now let's get practical. You might be wondering, how do I actually live this way? How do I stop trying without falling back into unconscious habits? The answer isn't in a technique or a practice. It begins with a very simple movement: awareness. Watch yourself. Watch when you're putting on the mask of maturity. Notice when you're forcing yourself to speak calmly while your chest is tight with anger. Notice when you're pretending not to care, while inside you feel hurt. Don't judge it. Don't try to change it. Just see it. And as you see it, something extraordinary begins to shift. The very act of seeing clearly dissolves the illusion. Just as when you wake up from a dream, you don't need effort to stop dreaming. You simply realize it was a dream. In the same way, when you become aware of your false performance of maturity, the performance loses its power. What remains is authenticity. And that authenticity is maturity. It's important to understand that maturity doesn't mean perfection. We often confuse the two. We think a mature person never gets angry, never feels jealous, never makes mistakes. But that's not maturity. That's fantasy. A mature person feels all those things, but they don't cling to them. They don't build an identity out of them. The emotions arise, they're seen, and they pass. The difference is not in the absence of emotions, but in the clarity of seeing them without distortion. Imagine life without this clarity. You're constantly measuring yourself against some ideal, always feeling inadequate, always pretending. That tension becomes a kind of prison. And the tragedy is that most people live their entire lives in that prison. They never discover that the door is open. They never discover that real maturity was waiting the whole time, right here, in the present moment, the moment they stop running. This doesn't mean life suddenly becomes easy. Challenges will still come. Pain will still come. But maturity is the capacity to meet those challenges without being consumed by them. It's the ability to face suffering without turning it into bitterness, to experience joy without clinging to it, to love without possession, and to be alone without loneliness. Those qualities can't be forced. They emerge naturally when the mind is free from struggle. So here's the paradox once more. Maturity happens when you stop trying to be mature. Just as sleep comes when you stop forcing yourself to sleep, just as creativity flows when you stop straining to be creative, so maturity unfolds when the effort ends. It is not the result of striving, it is the flowering of awareness. And maybe this is the most liberating part of all. You don't have to become anyone. You don't have to reach some distant goal. Everything you're looking for is already here, hidden under the layers of effort and ambition. The moment you stop chasing, you begin to discover. The moment you stop pretending, you begin to live. So perhaps the question is not, how can I become mature? But, can I be aware of what prevents maturity from happening on its own? That awareness is the doorway. And walking through it is not an act of will, it's the natural movement of a mind that has stopped fighting with itself. The paradox of growing up is not a puzzle to be solved. It's an invitation to see that life, in its deepest sense, is not about becoming, but about being. And when you understand that, maturity is no longer something to chase. It's something that flows through you, as naturally as a flower blooms, as effortlessly as the sun rises. So in the end, the paradox of maturity is really the paradox of life itself. The harder we chase after what we think we should be, the further we move from what we truly are. And the moment we stop chasing, when we pause and allow ourselves to simply observe, something deeper takes root. That depth is maturity. It's not about pretending to be wise, or hiding our emotions, or performing a role society has handed to us. It's about being real, present, and aware. It's about seeing yourself honestly, without resistance, without judgment. And in that seeing, there is freedom. When you stop trying to be mature, you discover a new quality of living. You respond to life with sensitivity instead of reaction. You meet others without masks, without games. You begin to experience love without fear, and solitude without loneliness. And this transformation is not the product of effort. It is the natural flowering of awareness. So perhaps the most powerful question you can ask yourself is this: can I stop striving for what I think I should be, and instead watch what I actually am? In that simple shift, you may discover that the maturity you've been seeking has been waiting all along. And maybe, just maybe, the most grown-up thing you can do is to stop trying to grow up.